Oh, welcome back to Gearhead's Garage. Another video, another day. So, I'm actually going to start a new series, a new playlist called Basic Maintenance. Type of maintenance that you would actually do on a vehicle, especially where in today's economy, older vehicles are becoming more popular because, let's face it, it's just with the economy the way it is. Everybody knows it. Older vehicles are cheaper. New vehicles are junk. We all know this. So I'm going to show, first video in this series is going to be on doing an oil change on my 2001 Dodge Ram 1500. I've got a couple of videos showcasing this. If you want, you can go back and watch those videos. I've had this truck going on 2 years, and it's time for an oil change. So another reason why I'm doing this video is also showing what you would do since older vehicles are becoming more popular. One of the first things you should invest money into when you buy a new vehicle, new to you, used, especially with lots of miles on them. This truck actually has a little over 200,000 miles on it. And let's face it, when you buy a vehicle about 90% of the time from a private seller, most of the time, about 90% of the time, they're not going to have any basic maintenance done. So the first thing you want to do is, do an oil change and a tune-up. So part of the tune-up is an oil change, but I don't have all the stuff to do a full-on tune-up video. So I'm just going to do this in each stage of the process. I'm going to do an oil change, and then the next video will be the next step. To get it to pass emissions, I did put in a K&N air filter. Everybody's opinions on those vary. All right, just my opinion, and that's what I'm stating. I've had very good success with K&N filters. Again, just like anything else, you follow the instructions on them, install it correctly, clean it correctly. In my experiences, they're very good filters. So I didn't do a video on that because I was on a time crunch to try to get this thing to pass emissions after I had the transmission rebuilt in it. So some of the tools you're going to need are ratchets, sockets, and then you will need a new oil filter, the correct oil type, and then it's up to you on whether you want to add additives. Higher mileage vehicles, I would suggest adding them. Lucas is a good one. I've used it for years, but I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try this Hyperlube from Rizlon. When I worked at O'Reilly's, this was actually a very popular additive, so I figured I'd give it a shot and see if this works. This engine's got a lot of high miles on it. There's a lot of miles on it. So I'm just testing other additives just to see how they perform, real world testing. Also, you're going to need a funnel. All right, funnels are a good thing to have. And you're going to need a drain pan adequate for your vehicle size. With this is about 5 to 6 quarts. So you're going to need a drain pan for at least that if you have a full crankcase. I don't. This truck's been leaking oil where the oil filter is. So there's not going to have a full 5 quarts in it. So first thing you want to do is be on level ground. I usually park the truck right there on my driveway, and it's not quite level. So you want to be on level ground. So that way, all right, you want to also run the engine to where to not operating temperature. I only ran it long enough to move it from my driveway to here, so it's not quite to operating temperature. And then you want to let it sit for 20 minutes. About 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes to let all the oil drain back. But there's not a whole lot of oil in the crankcase right now, maybe about 2 or 3 quarts. When I discovered, because I'm a long haul truck driver, I'm not home driving it. My brother and sister-in-law are driving it. Needless to say, they're not checking the oil in it. So when I got home and noticed an oil puddle on the driveway, I got up under there and looked and noticed that the oil filter's leaking. Figured, well, where the oil filter's leaking, instead of just putting a new filter on, I figured might as well just do an oil change. It also needs it, so prime opportunity to change the oil in it. So if there's not much oil in it, I'm not going to run it to operating temperature. All right, when I get under there, I'll show you the evidence where it's been leaking. All right, so now we're onto the truck. There's the oil pan. Don't get it confused with your trans pan. There's a lot of vehicles where the transmission pan is right next to the oil pan, and people get confused and they'll drain their transmission fluid. Be sure to know which one is your oil pan drain plug, not your transmission. I don't have to worry about that because one my oil pan is forward of the engine, or forward of the transmission, and my transmission pan doesn't have a drain plug. And all the moisture you're seeing right here, that's not transmission fluid, that is engine oil. Because the engine oil filter is right there. And if you look real closely, you can see the moisture, the engine oil right here at the bottom. If you get up, I have to flip my phone around. Yep. If you get up, right there, you can see where it's leaking from the bottom. So the seal on the filter is failed, which is a possible indication of the filter needs to be changed. Meaning the filter's clogged, it's not doing its job, it's not filtering, and it's overpressurized and blew the seal out. Now, it's not a real bad leak. It's bad enough that, yeah, I've lost a couple quarts of oil. It is leaking down on the new exhaust pipes here that I had replaced when I had the catalytic converter replaced in it. So I'm getting a real bad smell of stuff burning, and you can see it's caking on. So there's where we're at with that. I'm gonna flip my phone around. I'm not sure how this is gonna turn out, so bear with me. This is all still done on my phone. I'm still experimenting with video editing because I am not tech savvy. And I know to be YouTube content creator, you gotta be tech savvy, but I am learning. So, all right, so there's where the oil filter is. So the first thing we want to do is slide our drain pan under. I'm trying to do this with one hand here. I might have to pause you guys and do some of this work, but when I take your drain plug out with the correct socket with this particular Dodge with the 5.9 Magnum, this has got a 5/8 drain plug, so half drive ratchet, long handle, and a 5/8 socket. We'll start draining the oil. So I'm going to go up top. One of the things I forgot to mention is before you come down here, be sure to take your oil cap, your oil fill cap off the valve cover or where you put your oil into the crankcase in to help it vent, help it drain better. So I will be back in just a second. All right, so I am back. I just got back under here from taking the oil cap off the top. I'm gonna try to do this one-handed. Sorry, my camera work ain't all that great. You want to take your drain plug off real slowly. Trying to do this, keep you guys in frame. Try not to. And that is how you some vehicles, the drain will end up coming onto cross members. Four-wheel drives, it'll come onto the axle and stuff and drip down. So make sure you got a wide enough drain pan or have it in the correct location, or you will make a mess. And you can tell by the color of that oil, that right there needs to be changed. The last time I actually did an oil change in this was a little over a year ago. So yeah, now I'm changing the oil in it. So I'll be back with you guys in just a second when I pull the oil filter off. So this would be also a good time to examine your oil. A lot of times your drain plugs have magnets in them. Look at the magnet. Make sure that there's no metal shavings in it. You can get test kits where you can take a sample and have it to analyze to see what's going on inside your engine. I've seen a lot of automotive content creators do that. A lot of fleets do that. So that would be, if you've got the money to do so, that would be a good idea to do. Most of these quick lube places, I can tell you, they'll get towards draining like this and they'll put the plug back in. That's not getting all the old oil out. The whole idea of an oil change is to get as much of the old oil out as possible. You're not going to get all of it because there's still going to be a lot of residual oil up inside the engine, up on top, and other nooks and crannies in the oil galleys and stuff. So you're not going to get 100% of it out, but you want to try to get as much of it out as you possibly can. All right, so let it actually drain down to the point where it's, see, this one's still a steady stream. You want to drain it down to the point where it's just dripping, all right? That'll get as much of it out because you're still going to have a little bit of residual oil here in the sump, especially in the corners and stuff. So yeah, you're not going to get it all out, but try to get as much of it as you can out. And before you put these back in, these drain plugs, a lot of these newer drain plugs will have seals on them. If the seals are bad and they start leaking, you change the drain plug. Other ones have replaceable plastic or rubber O-rings that go on them. That's another thing. They're $1 or $2 or $2 with inflation and whatnot. They used to be less than $1, but yeah, they're fairly inexpensive. They're a good thing to replace. Some of them are even made out of metal. You want to cut those off and get a new one. Those are roughly about the same price, right around $1 or so. You want to replace those every 2 to 3 oil changes. In some vehicles, and again, research your vehicle on this, they might require you to replace them every time. Where this one, if you look real closely, it's got an O-ring right there. It wasn't leaking, so I'm not going to change it. I'm just going to clean it up, throw this back in, and tighten it up. And you don't want to use impacts or any other power tools, pneumatic or electric power tools, when putting these back in. The quick lube places do that. That's wrong. That's how you strip these threads out, and that's where a lot of problems come from. Hand tools only on this. This is one of the jobs where it's hand tools only. All right, see where it's getting down to about a fine drip right here. So I didn't bring any rags down here. See, I'm even forgetting stuff. So that's about right where you want it. We got a slight breeze. It's gonna make a mess, so we're just gonna go ahead and throw this back in. All right, I'll be back with you guys in just a second. All right, so I've tightened that back up. I actually grabbed a rag, pulled it back out, cleaned it off. Everything's good, no metal. Seal looks good, tightened it back up. So now the next thing is oil filter wrenches. There's many different ways you can get these oil filters off. All right, you can take a screwdriver, poke a hole in it, use that as a lever to pull that off. It also allows for draining of the filter as well. That's a method I've used plenty of times in the past, but they do make proper wrenches for it. Here's what a oil filter wrench, or a type of oil filter wrench, looks like. They've got these ones. They've got oil filter wrench or oil filter pliers, kind of look like channel locks, and then they have giant sockets that fit on the ribs on the very tip right here to take those off. So but this is one of those cases where use the proper tool for the job. This just slides over the body, and when you go to start loosening it, it tightens up, grips it, and it does both ways. You can actually tighten a filter or loosen a filter with these. So make sure you readjust your drain pan, because there will be oil in there that will come out. Make sure you have rag handy, because you will need to clean the surfaces up. And I will be back with you with the next piece of advice I'm going to give you. All right, so now that you got your oil filter off, yeah, mine's still draining. You want to make sure that your gasket, which is that black ring right there, comes with it. Because if you don't, you slap your next oil filter on, your new oil filter on there, it's going to be called double gasketed, and it will leak. So yes, make sure that your gasket comes with it. If not, and it stays on the block or your oil filter adapter, you're going to want to scrape that off, clean it off. All right, you don't want any residual gasket material on there. I personally have, in the 30 some odd years I've been changing oil on my vehicles, you know, just doing basic automotive maintenance work in my backyard, that sort of thing, I have never had a gasket stick and stay on the block or the oil filter adapter. That doesn't mean, obviously, if they're telling us this, if it's something I was taught in high school and even taught by my old man at a young age, and even had my grandparents teach me this, my grandpa's teach me this, that means it's happened. All right, just because I have never experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So now, once that's done draining, you want to come up here and you want to wipe this clean. You can use some brake clean, you know, or parts cleaner or something like that. Come up here and clean this. I've never really done that. I've done it a few times just to see the difference, see if it actually makes a difference, and I don't notice any difference. So I just come up, wipe it dry. All right, I wipe the threads dry to make sure that they're clear of anything, and then I wipe the sealing surface, which is right here. Get that all dry of any old residual oil. Now that's clean, I'm going to finish letting it drip. It's going to drip a little bit, and then we'll come up top and I'll show you how to prep the new oil filter, and then we'll get it on, and then everything else will be done from up top. That's all. Once we put the new oil filter on, that'll be the last we do down here, other than coming down and checking for leaks. Because like anything else, any other repair you make, you always want to verify, make sure nothing's leaking. So, yep, that is clean, and we'll see up top. All right, so we're back up top. All right, got the new oil filter out. This is a new O'Reilly brand MicroGuard oil filter that they brought in just shortly after I left. So I figured I'd give it a try. It's high mileage. This is designed for high mileage engines, so I figured I'd give it a try or see if it's a sales gimmick. I usually use Wix. I spend the money, and I usually use Wix. And yeah, I have the money, but I figured new type of filter. It's part of their cheaper brand lineup, in-house cheap brand lineup. Figured I'd give it a shot and see how things go with this. Because the oil was, when it drained, it looked black, but to get a bit of sunlight through it, it was translucent, so it was filtered oil. I know some of you guys may not think that means anything. The other thing is now that there is no oil in the crankcase, do not start your engine. I have seen people do that. So don't be stupid, all right? With no oil in the crankcase, don't start your engine. All right. So, see, we got ourselves a red O-ring. So you got some guys, some old schoolers out there that say priming these ain't gonna do a damn thing. Well, being an experienced engine builder myself, I've built plenty of engines. I mean, it's not something I do on a daily basis, but I've built plenty of engines. Priming these actually does help. It does, once the engine starts cranking over, the parts start moving, the pump starts moving. This already having oil in it will help get oil to the top of the engine quicker. All right, I have done these experiments when I've primed brand new rebuilt engines before their first startup, because you always prime them before you start them. So when I put the priming tool down to run the oil pump with the valve covers off, I have experimented with dry filters and prime filters, and prime filters get oil to the top quicker than dry filters do. So I always prime my filters. So you take a quart of oil, and I know some of you Dodge heads out there are going to probably freak out on the screen saying, don't use 1540. Well, here's the thing. This is an old school engine. This engine design's been around since the 1960s. Not much has changed on it, because I've built a few of these small blocks, both dating back to the early 1970s and a couple modern ones for these trucks. All right. There isn't much internally that has changed with them. Tolerances are still the same. With 200,000 miles, this oil is actually going to be better for it. All right, so I'm going to set you guys down for a second. 2 hands to open this here Earl. And we are going to pour it down the center So a lot of these filters take almost a quart of oil. Almost a quart. Sometimes between a half and 3/4 of a quart of oil. Another reason why I do this is these other holes here, those are drain back holes. Just to make sure that that drain back valve isn't faulty. So that's about as far as I go with that. I don't prime them completely, like fill them all the way up. So in a lot of cases, your filters on the block, like Fords, like small block Fords, 302s, 50s of old, not the new ones, not the Coyote ones, the old school ones, cast iron ones. They're kind of almost on 90 degrees. Some of the Jeep engines, like the 4-liter inline 6, they're on 90 degrees to the block. So when you go and prime them and screw them on, they can leak. This one is actually still facing up, but at a slight angle. It's another reason why I didn't fill it all the way. Second thing is these O-rings here, you always want to put fresh, clean oil, lubricate them. That's how they seal. If you don't do that and you put it on dry, it won't seal. So yes, you have to put a film of oil on those in order for them to seal properly. So I have seen a few videos of content creators, other channels. I'm not going to throw out some names that I'm not sure if these videos are just satirical or if these people are just plain stupid. But I wouldn't trust a lot of what they're putting out and just use those as entertainment purposes, where they show you putting sealant of some type on this O-ring, Loctite here. Now, these go on, how you prep these is just fill it, a little bit of oil on the O-ring, and then screw it on. All right, so I will get back with you down there and show you how to put that on. All right, well, I ended up pressing the wrong button on my phone and had to start a new segment. So, but you go screw these on, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. I've never heard of a filter that doesn't screw on righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So, we're going to do, I already got my new one screwed on. Yeah, and a little bit of oil did spill out, but once I got it screwed on and going, it stopped leaking. That's just a little bit of residual that leaked out. So, all right, I screwed it on hand tight. You don't want to go ugga-dugga on these. All right, slip your filter wrench on. All right, I might have to pause you guys and do this two-handed, but slip a filter wrench back on once you get it hand tight, and I usually just bump it about a 16th, maybe an 8th turn past then, and that's as far as you go. You don't want to over tighten these because you will cause a leak, but I get it on hand tight, take the wrench, and then I just bump it just a little bit past, about a 16th, maybe an 8th, depending on the filter, and you're good to go. All right, so now that we got the oil filter on, all right, next thing you want to do is take your funnel. When it comes to adding supplements such as this, Lucas, or other supplements, you don't want to. What I like to do, and this helps it mix better, is I'll put a couple of quarts, about 2, maybe 2.5 quarts crankcase. I'll put this in, and then I'll top the crankcase off on that. So that way, when I start the engine, the pump can thoroughly mix it. All right, to put this stuff in on top or down at the very bottom, not me personally, I don't think it's going to mix very well. So I usually mix it in the middle, so it's thoroughly mixed. All right, and that's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think I need to show that on camera on how to put oil in. All right. Now, for those of you who are new to this, I mean, you stick your funnel in and you pour it. Not that difficult. Those of you who are new to the car world, some of those Gen Zers or whatever generation's coming up into high school and getting ready to learn to drive, there'll be a little lesson on checking your oil. So you pull your dipstick, you wipe it off, and then you put it back in, pull it back out. All right. When you read your dipstick, all right, it'll have either dots or a line that says full, a line that says add, like this one. And you even got, well, might even have some hash marks in there. See, you're in the part where it's top line right there, that is your full line. If the oil level is down right there where it says add at that line, then you need to add some. And then anywhere in between that bottom line and that top line is a safe level. You don't have to have it fully up to this line at all times. See where it says safe, anywhere, the level being anywhere in between these two lines is a safe oil level. All right, so when checking your oil, you want to add enough oil until you're fully topped off, because there's still going to be the partial filter. If you have an engine oil cooler and a few other things that drained out as well, then those are going to fill up. So you start your engine, you run it, you let it sit for a few minutes after running it, making sure you got oil pressure and verifying it's not leaking. Then top off as needed, and then go from there. And that is how you do an oil change. And this is one of the first things you want to do when buying a new vehicle, especially from a private seller. Most dealerships will do oil changes as part of their intake, especially if it's a vehicle they're going to put on their lot sell. Cash and carries from dealerships are a little different story. They're as is. So verify with your dealership, and even before you even think about buying the vehicle, how people say take it to a mechanic and have them look at it. Well, one of the things you can do in front of the salesman is pop the hood, locate your engine oil dipstick, pull it out, and verify that that oil has been changed. Because if that oil hasn't been changed, it is going to show up on that dipstick. So, but this is one of the things you do, and then you want to check with your manufacturer. Usually in the owner's manual, you can find it online, make, model, year, make, model. And you can find the factory specs on the intervals on mileage-wise, time-wise, on when the oil needs to be changed. Older vehicles like this were still the same, about every 3 months or 3,000 miles. With oil technology, usually it's now it's about every 6 months or every 5,000 to 6,000 miles, because it's now based on oil, not the vehicle. So again, check with your manufacturer, then check with the oil and filter manufacturers as well. Usually they align about the same. So usually anywhere between 2 to 4 times a year is you want to change your oil. So I stick with the old school way of every 3 months or 3,000 miles, or I try to at least. So, but yeah, being an older engine with high mileage, everything's wore out, thicker oil. And I'm using the diesel oil because it's got other anti-wear additives and properties to it. All right, that work great. I've used diesel oil in gasoline engines, especially worn out ones, high mileage ones, not ever had a problem. So that's what I do. It's your, with your vehicles, you do what you want to do, use what you want. So have at it.